Hello there and welcome to Entrepreneur Lives. Today we have Serge. He's a serial entrepreneur and has vast experience in his business over the last number of years. He's the founder of clientacquisition.io. In the first 12 months of leaving his 9 to 5 job and setting up his business, he managed to have an online business doing nearly $100,000 a month. And this was in the appointment setting first, and then he shifted towards consulting. He made over 400,000 in his first year of business. So, wow, welcome, Serge. How are you?
Thank you. Welcome. I'm good. I'm doing great.
Great. Can you
Yeah.
tell us a bit about your journey and I suppose you being a bit of a business icon at this stage and how your success?
Yeah. No, for me, it started when, it started like most everyone nowadays, just going through online courses and I was still working at 9 to 5, but I couldn't get myself to scale the business when I was starting out. So I decided to leave the job. I felt like, and that's probably my first lesson for everyone who's listening to this. It's like, if you want to run a business, a successful business, you can only be doing that. You can't mix it with other activities and think that you're going to be successful. So
Yeah.
that's what I did in 2020. I started an agency, an advertising agency at the time. We were helping coaches and consultants, and but that didn't also work out too well for me because the way that I had gotten that offer or that service that I was selling was from a course.
Right.
Now, if you're learning to sell something from a course
Yeah.
instead of learning it from the market, then you're selling something that the market has not necessarily confirmed that they wanted. Now, I did definitely get my first client with that offer, but after that, I realized that the market didn't have the capital to be able to afford um, the services that I was selling. Pay the retainer, pay the ad spend. So I was like, you know what? Let me just pivot to appointment setting, doing outbound prospecting with $3 an hour sitters with VAs, and that's how I got started with my first appointment setting agency in 2021.
You see, that's you as an entrepreneur. You've seen a gap, and then you'd realize that you had to diversify to suffice your fulfillment with your
Yeah.
desire, your passion, and then that's what you did. And I suppose as entrepreneurs, that's what we look at. We're always looking at different ways. The one way is not necessarily the right way, but it's all about, I suppose, when we look at persistence and following with what you truly believe in.
Mhm.
What is it that inspired you to start your own business in the first place? So tell us a bit about
Mm.
when you first started and how you ended up getting into that, I suppose, arena.
Yeah. So for me, I don't know what got me started, but I can kind of like maybe share my life story and that can kind of like give a little bit of background. So for me, I was born in Rwanda, it's in Africa, and I moved to Canada at 13 years old, right? So when you go from Rwanda, yes, I was living good. My family is doing fine. But when I got to Canada, I got to see what kind of like an evolved society looks like. And I could see like the differences in wealth. I could see people who are homeless,
Yeah,
and I could see people driving $250,000 cars.
yeah,
And one of the commitment that I made when I got here was that, I was not necessarily going to settle for being average, because now this is a country where opportunities are available. So you get to become what you get to choose to become.
hmm,
So when I went through school, but the thing that really sparked my interest a lot with entrepreneurship was when I got started in network marketing. So um, I got to this presentation that was being done, and there was a bunch of people, and these people were really having personal development, and I just got hooked on the mindset of becoming more.
very good.
So after that, I started reading books, all the books around personal development. Even at my 9 to 5, I would be working, listening to podcasts, podcasts from Andy Frisella, all these great podcasts, and I just literally reprogrammed my mind into thinking that I can do more.
So you're always learning. That's the
Yeah.
key element here. Because I know going back, might have been maybe 2 years ago when I first stumbled across you, and you
Mm,
gave me some great pointers and some great books, which I read, and I'm an avid learner. I've been learning, you know,
nice.
30 years. I don't like reading, but I do it because I
Yeah.
feel it's good and I like it and I learn lots of
Hmm.
stuff from it. But I
Yeah.
suppose, there's lots of evolving and changes that happen in the business world. What
Mhm.
is it that makes you stay ahead and constantly, evolve with that business landscape?
Okay. Um, so this is an important question. So for me, what I try to do, so I think that some industries are ahead of others, meaning we maybe in 2023, but the way that people are starting online businesses, um, there are industries that have already passed through this phase
Hmm.
that of a process that people are using in different industries. So for me, um, the thing that I like to stay ahead by looking at other more successful businesses. So as an example, if you're trying to build an eight-figure company, well, the best way you can learn how to make eight figures is to find someone who's making eight figures in a day,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
if you go and look at Amazon, and if you go look at Apple, if you go look at all these, these trillion-dollar companies, you end up realizing a specific path, and
Yeah.
they all have a common trend, and they all have that at the core. Their nucleus is this thesis around having an audience or like a user base, right?
Yeah.
They all have that in common. Everybody owns a lot of people's attention.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to grow a business, like even this podcast, if you really think about it, a podcast, the benefit of it is that you're giving something that people can consume so they
Yeah.
can actually pay attention to you. So what? You're actually now building an audience. So the fact that you're doing this podcast is a great insight of yours, right? You just said that you're working on a book. Like that was amazing. You give something away for free, people
Yeah.
pay you attention, then you can solve their problems. So like for me, I really learn a lot from bigger companies. Like I try not to learn from people. Of course, I'll learn from, like, if I need more appointments, if I need more revenue, if I need more show up rate, I'll learn from the people, let's say, one step ahead of me.
Yeah.
But like the vision of the company, I'll always try to get it from people who are a million steps ahead of me.
Yeah, so I know I've heard you talk about Alex Hormozy before, and lots of people
Mhm.
talk about him, and of course he's way up there in the a pinnacle of success. But what's
Yeah.
your view on Alex and where he is?
I, you can learn a lot about his transition,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
Because for me, it's like you gotta so a lot of people may look at Alex and just get the thing that he's giving them,
Yeah,
or you can also learn a lot by what he's doing, right?
yeah,
I think there's more to learn about what he's doing than just what are the business principles that he's sharing. And I
yeah.
think it's
Great.
always this issue with most people. It's like they'll hear, but they won't, like, they'll hear what someone is saying, but they won't really observe what someone is doing.
Yeah,
So
yeah. No,
for me,
yeah, I
yeah.
think it's a lot of things is, and you know this better than anyone else, but it really is about taking action. You can spend all the money you want with all the amount of people you want and learn from all
Hmm.
the top gurus and whatever. If
Yeah.
you don't take the action on what you're learning, it simply just doesn't happen. You're not going to go anywhere. And then people will
No.
blame everything but themselves. But the book stops with the
I
individual.
know.
Would you agree?
I totally agree. I agree 100%. I don't know if you were on the Webby on Sunday, but I said that, and this is also something that Hermosi has been mentioning. For him, he gives it the definition of intelligence is the rate of learning plus the rate of change.
Yeah,
A lot of people just focus on the rate of learning, where their cycle of learning, they're learning every day, they're becoming better, they're like, their understanding is like $1 billion company, they know how to build $1 billion company, but when
yeah.
it comes to their behavior, they are not even behaving like someone who runs a six-figure company.
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree. I find like I've studied paradigms, over the last maybe 7 or 8 years. And, when
Hmm.
you look into the behaviors of individuals, some people talk about it, but they don't act it. And then when
Yeah.
they get caught up in a paradigm, somebody wants to make a lot of money and they get stuck in. And for 2 or 3 weeks, like they're full on and they're giving it loads. Now they're burnt out. And all of a sudden
Yeah.
it's exhaustion and they walk away.
Hmm.
Whereas if
Yeah.
you constantly change your behavior and then adapt it to become a habit, well, then all of a sudden now you're in the right zone to get the
Yeah.
success that you're going after. Yeah.
Yeah. 100%. 100%.
What strategies or approaches do you use to build and maintain, I suppose, your company culture? Because obviously you're growing all the time. Your business is
Yeah.
growing. What culture do you have within your business?
I recently just revamped our mission and like core values for the company, which is something I had not done since 2020. That's just how much I haven't been too emphasizing too much the culture, because I think that a company that's doing less than 8 figures, it's like there's so much. I mean, if you're really focused on growth, it's almost like you don't have time to focus on the things that don't produce results. So
Yeah.
it's almost like in the last year or and a half, I've kind of like just been like, hey, what can we do? What can we do? Instead of like trying to be more leveraged
Yeah.
um with my activities. So I think values and culture is a leveraged thing that can kind of like make sure that all the work that has ever produced is produced at a faster pace.
Yeah.
For me, what I think, what I've just started doing is I just set the right core mission. Like, hey, why are we here? What are we working for?
Yeah.
And then the values that lead everything we work on. And
Okay.
um and although one of the other thing that I like to do is I like to remind my team that it's not just about the work.
Yeah.
We're not working just so we can like our value does not come our worth does not come from the work.
Yeah.
We do the work because we want to do it and because we want to have an impact in the world, because we want to inspire others, but we also want to live. And
Yeah.
if you really want to live well, you're going to need to provide a lot of value to a lot of people.
Yeah, I think
So yeah.
it is. You're so right, and I love that. I love that about you and your business. But when you look at giving to other people, you get back a lot more in many different ways. And people, I find like 30 odd years now being in business, and I've
Mhm.
stumbled across so many times where people tend to be a little bit greedy, and then it turns on them. Whereas the people that
Mhm.
tend to give and look after the people and surround themselves with people that care for them, but they give back the respect, you tend to have a much better business and a much better lifestyle, being happier and abundant in many different ways. Would you agree?
Yeah, 100%, 100%. For me, I know I just it's even one of the values in the company is be selfless, right?
Yeah.
Because it's counterintuitive, but the most selfish thing you can do is to be selfless,
Yeah. What about
right?
what would you see with your competition? Like how
Hmm.
do you look at competition? I suppose for anybody listening here, with a growth company like yourselves, you're always
Yeah,
looking at avenues and areas to grow and you adapt them. But what is it that, or how do you look at your competitors?
yeah. Um, I think there are two states. If I'm in a state, if I'm in my lower self and I'm just afraid and I'm not in my power self, then I'll kind of like look at them and try to copy what they're doing.
Mhm.
But what I tend to just focus on is how can I do more for the market than they are?
Yeah.
Meaning
Yeah.
I don't optimize for what someone else is doing,
Yeah.
because a lot of the people, my competition, they're people who got in the business game, even in my situation, for their own lifestyle, right? Meaning they wanted a better life, they wanted to do better things. Like I don't think Mark Zuckerberg maybe he did, but I
Yeah.
don't think he started coding so he can start driving a Lambo,
Yeah.
right? He did
Yeah.
not do it. He
Yeah.
did it because he's like, I think we could create a great thing. So it
Okay.
was all about let's create. So what ends up happening is the reason why I don't look at a lot of my competition is because a lot of them are building cash cow businesses, just lifestyle businesses.
Yeah.
So if I optimize to build a company like they are doing it, I'm not really building for sustainability. I'm just building for short term. So
Yeah.
to be honest, whatever my competition is doing, I try to do the other way. I try to go the other way.
Yeah, no, I love that. Like, I suppose when you talk about that, it's really a mindset thing. Because again, when I look at, over the years and all the different, including myself in this case, where
Yeah.
many years ago, I had a successful business, seven-figure business, had the lifestyle, but was always in fear of losing it. Lived on my nerves, lived on the burnout, lived on the
Mm,
unhealthiness, unhappiness. But the only thing is we had loads of abundance, but it wasn't really enough because working too many hours. And it's only in the
yeah.
last 5 or 6 years I've realized that, look, you can give a lot more back to people and you can create happiness, health, and abundance. And like what you mentioned there a few minutes ago, I think some of these people stumble into a business, but they don't really know what's happening. I call it an unconscious competent. And that's what happened to me. I didn't know why I was doing it. But then when I realized that I could change that and have it all, well, then of course I was able to change the mindset to deal with it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's, you need to change the way you view things, and the why needs to change if you want to be at peace and really work to create some amazing things.
Yeah, look, when you make decisions, and I'm sure you make a lot of tough decisions, but like what type of process do you go through when you come up against a big decision? And the reason why I ask that is because, like, decisions are a make or break sometimes for a lot of people, especially in business. And you've
Yeah.
got to sometimes make them quickly. But what way do you do it, or what's that effect on you?
I try to, if I have to make a hard decision, I try to look at, like, a decade from now.
Mm.
And I try to see, I try to ask myself, okay, cool. If I go this path instead of this, what are the consequences that are going to come from this decision down the line? So as an example, let's say I have this employee who I think is not great, but they're okay, right? I
Mm.
may look at, how can I say it? I may look at the short-term pain from firing them, like, oh, if I fire them, then these things are not going to get done. Then we may not necessarily make as much money short term. Or I could look at the long term and be like, well, if this person stays in the company, not only am I going to keep, my mind is going to always be thinking about him. So he's going to take up mental space for me. He's
Yeah,
going to he's going to ruin the culture, right?
yeah,
He's going to make other people not do average work. So now you end up realizing that, like, yeah, short term pain is painful, but the long term consequences are actually 10 times greater.
yeah. I agree.
So I really try to play the game on, like, 10-year basis. Like, hey, if I sell this person, let's say a wrong client, let's say he's trying to make money, you could try to collect cash now and sell the wrong people into your company. And you're like, okay, I'm successful today. I make money today. But
Mm.
what happens when the wrong clients that you've signed don't get results? And now they go around saying that you sold them something that doesn't work, when in fact the thing works, but it's just that they were the wrong clients. So now your
Yeah,
brand is ruined
yeah,
from
yeah.
yeah, you made money today, but tomorrow you have no company. So it's always on, like, on a 10-year basis. What are the, second and third order consequences of each decision?
You're so spot on, because I've seen it so many times again with when we talk about, you see people taking on clients and they take them on because they want the income and not because they feel they want to work with them. And then it takes up time and energy. And then,
Mm-hmm.
I think it was the 4 hour, that book, the 4 hour rule, the
Work
4 hour
week.
day. And he talked
Yeah.
about, he talked about where he got rid of some of his biggest clients. And it actually ended up the following year, then he turned over more money because he was spending so much time and energy on the people that he thought were the
Yeah.
big players, but in fact they weren't. They were just taking up all the time
Mm-hmm.
and energy.
Yeah.
What is it you can share then, I suppose, with entrepreneurs and someone that wants to enter into the entrepreneurial world?
Yeah.
You're meeting them every day, but what is it that you tell them and you help them with?
I think for me, the number one advice I tell people is, like, just go for more. Like, believe that you deserve more. I
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of people set goals so small because they're basing it off of where they're coming from,
Mm-hmm.
right? So they'll look at their environment, they'll see, oh, most people in my family or most people in my country earn this amount of money, live this type of lifestyle. So when they setting goals, they set it just a step above their environment, just average. But for me, I don't like that type of goal setting, because when you set goals like that, it doesn't create enough motivation and enough excitement for you to go through the pain of building a company.
Mm-hmm.
What most people don't realize is that to build a 10K a month business may be even harder than making a 100K a month business or $1 million a month business.
Yeah.
So if your goals are small and you're sacrificing your time, your stress all the time for making 10K a month, I would say change your goal. Just go for bigger. So at least
Mm-hmm.
when you have to wake up early every day and do things that don't pay off the next day, at least you're still like, hey, this is the goal. I'm excited. It's gonna happen no matter what. So you have something that keeps moving you forward. But the other thing is, maybe the advice to just get a quick win is find someone who's doing something, maybe through information or helping people through information, and take that information and build a done for you service around the information for that industry.
Yeah, I think I heard you talk about that. I was last week about a girl, the lady that was doing the Excel, and she was selling Excel. She started off showing people how to use an Excel. So it's
Mhm.
widely available to everybody else, but yet she created, and she's turning over a couple of $100,000 a year now by just teaching people how to use Excel.
Yeah,
You know, so
that's it.
it's like what I always say. There's opportunity always there, and it comes knocking on your door when you go look for it. But if you're caught up in your day-to-day habitual state of behaviors, you tend not to see what's
Mhm.
going on. So the
Yeah,
opportunity doesn't come. And when you
yeah.
talk about growing the business, and when you look at somebody wanting to go from say 10,000 a month to 100,000 a month, it's actually, as you said, it is easier because you're just introducing systems to get you to move to the next stage. It's the mindset that's holding them back. The way they
Mhm.
think and the way their habits and behaviors.
Yeah, yep.
What is something else, I suppose, give us a golden nugget that you can share then with some of the listeners and I suppose
Yeah.
the viewers.
I think something you just mentioned is, systems. I think introducing leverage into your business is the way to go, because business is hard. Like, it's hard, like I just said. But when you introduce people and systems and softwares, business becomes so easy. It just becomes such an amazing experience and working with people. So for me, one of the things that I've started doing for myself is, before I make a decision or before I do something. So, I've learned to make millions per year, right?
Hmm.
But in order for me to start making millions per month, I need to actually stop myself from behaving like someone who's making a few millions per year behaves. So every time I do something, I ask myself, hey, this is a good activity. It has made us millions. It has gotten us to where we are here. But
Hmm.
unfortunately, if I keep doing it this way, it's not going to get us to 10x the business. So what I do myself is, let's say I'm about to write an email.
Yeah.
Instead of writing an email, so emails get us some pretty good results. Instead of writing an email, to my email list, I'm like, you know what, today I'm going to build a hiring funnel. I'm going to build a hiring VSL, and I'm going to hire a copywriter,
Yeah. Love it.
right?
Yeah.
And then now when I hire a copywriter, the activities that I was doing to get us, let's say, a few hundred grand, a few millions per year in revenue,
Yeah.
then someone else comes in, and maybe instead of me, because I don't spend my days writing emails, I just do it, let's say, once for 30 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes. Well, that person now full-time job is to write the thing that I would spend 15, 30 minutes on every day, but
Hmm.
do it for 5 hours a day. So now we're 10, 50xing the or 5xing the amount of inputs on the
Yeah.
right activity. So now the results have the potential of 5xing.
Yeah.
And all it took was the same amount of time I would take for write an email
Hmm.
to hire someone who can forever write emails for us. So now, instead of a call with someone who can end up buying a $15,000-$20,000 program, now I just spent 30 minutes creating a thing that can hire the person who can write 5 emails a day and get us maybe 5 people wanting to buy a
Yeah.
15, 20K thing.
Brilliant.
So
Look, I
it's all,
love it.
yeah,
I love it. You're a numbers guy, and lots of people don't realize that numbers are so important when it comes to business, because numbers tell you where the problems are or where if you need to change something. And
yeah,
and when I work with businesses now, that's what we find, that 90% I go into, they don't have any form of keeping of data. And I always say data and knowledge are the two things that help you make decisions, because you'll
yeah.
find where the problem is. Recently I went to a lady, and she runs an international company, and I was surprised to see that she wasn't keeping some data. But when we were able to see a lot of stuff that she was leaving on the table, she almost
Mm,
multiplied her turnover in a very short period purely from
yeah,
looking at data. And then she'd
yeah,
realized that other stuff she was spending money on wasn't even working. And she was saying, like, I'd love to be able to work from home. And I says, well, keep going this way with the data and you will be able to work from home.
yeah.
Have everything on the computer. So look, what is it that I suppose keeps you balanced then when we look at the work-life balance? Like,
Hmm.
you spend lots of time, free time, in your own space and then the work environment, or are you a workaholic?
Yeah. So this is how I work. I try to sprint and then kind of like rest. But so normally I will, let's say every quarter, I'll do, let's say like 8 to 10 weeks of work. So I'll
Mhm.
go through a season where I'm turning the dial back down on just like a lot of, freedom, a lot of fun. I'll just turn it back down, completely down, and just create space to just work. If I want to work Saturday, I'll work Saturday. If I'm working Sunday, I'm work Sunday. So like in the last few months, in the last 5 months, I have not traveled. I have not done anything. I just all just producing. But that's not sustainable because I don't care how much money you're making.
Mhm.
When you are just working to work to make money, it becomes, it's almost like you lose the inspiration of creating. And for me, I never want to work out of a need for money or like, I don't, the end outcome is not money, it's living.
Yeah.
So, but what I want to do, what I try to do every week is I try to work like 6 days, not necessarily 6 days, like 8 hour, 10 hour days. I don't do that. And nobody actually works 10 hour days. That's a lie.
Yeah.
But I'll work maybe like 5, 6 hours a day, but I'll work 6 days a week. And then one day of the week is pure. I may spend the day just watching movies, like 10 hours of just doing nothing, just because I want to almost like start wondering and getting lost into other things that are not related to business.
Yeah.
Because when your mind is always on like, hey, to do, to do, to do, you don't get to be pulled back from the inside of the business and start being like, oh guys, we could actually do this to solve all these things.
I think there's two things
So
you mentioned.
yeah.
Yeah, two things you mentioned there. One is taking the day off. I think we're led by inspiration when we're away from it. It's like being outside the
Yes.
bubble. Yeah, and then the person that gets caught up in the bubble, tends to, if someone says I'm doing 16 and 18 hours a day, in fact, they're probably only working 4 or 5, but they've got caught up with all the different
Yeah.
issues. Yeah. But when you're obviously an active person and you enjoy what you're doing and you get, you get fulfillment out of it. So you're inspired by the way you work and it drives you
Mhm.
forward. How or what could you tell to other people how you develop that inspiration?
I think you got to get good at what you do.
Mhm.
I think the only way to like what you do is to be good at what you do. Because what happens when you get good at what you do is you start getting incentivized really well.
Mhm.
And when you start getting incentivized, when you start getting paid well, you tend to to build a habit around keep doing what you're good at and wanting to get better. So the best advice is I would optimize to be the best at the thing that I do. I would spend a lot of time learning, out outspending money, outspending time learning and to become the best at what I do, right?
Yeah.
Because if you don't get good, you're not going to like what you do. Like average players in business are not business is not fun.
Yeah.
Business only gets fun when you're business or any career, right? Like I'm sure that there are people who work 9 to 5s who are having so much fun because you know what? They're the superstar of the company. They get bonuses, $250,000 a year, $500,000 a year, even 7 figure a year earners.
Mhm.
Well, for that person, even starting a business is not worth it for them because they're good at what they do. They get paid well. So, but they outwork most people. So become the best.
Yeah, no, I love that. Again, it really is about looking at, what your goals are, what your long term. I find a lot of people tend to work for their needs, so they'll have a goal
Mm-hmm.
and say, I want to earn $1 million, but in fact, they're only at $100,000. And, the quantum leap is just too big for them to take. But when they start to look at what they want and start to develop their day, taking actionable steps every day towards
Mm-hmm.
their goal, and quantifying that, they find that they start to move towards it. Whereas somebody caught in their paradigm or their habitual state of behavior, they tend not to go anywhere. They tend to get stuck.
Yes.
And I would have been that person while I was driven by money in my earlier part of life. Now
Yeah.
it's like what you said. It's about being happy and healthy, and having abundance as well, and enjoying what you have.
Mm-hmm.
What is it that you enjoy? So let's say outside of the business environment, what's
Yeah.
your forte, or what is it that really makes you, want to take time out?
Uh, to be honest, I don't have many things I do besides work.
Yeah.
um, I I I don't really. So for me, if I'm going to do something, I look forward to having time off to be present.
Yeah.
I don't have a specific thing that I do. Like I have just a few activities. I may go to the movies. I may
Yeah.
just, go drive cars. I may just go to the gym and things like that. But for me, what I'm optimizing for is, can I have a day where I'm present, or can I have a week somewhere beautiful in Spain, or in another country, and just be present with people without having to be worried about money, about this, about work, about nothing. It's like, can I afford to be present? And for me, it's like whatever thing I'm doing that allows me to be present, I want to do that. And that presence is everything for me.
I remember going back a few years back, maybe 10 years ago, I bumped into a lady and she was a multi-millionaire, and she was, I was saying to her, what is it that, brings you to where you are? And she says, well, I work every day. Even she says, while I'm here, I'm working. And I said, oh, do you
Mm-hmm.
not take time off? And she says, no, you don't get what I mean. She says, I'm on the beach, I'm working. And I said, but why would you want to work all the time? She says, I'm more productive on the beach doing nothing, sitting there in the sun than I am actually sitting in an office.
Mm,
And for years, I could not figure out what she was talking about. I said, this lady's off her rocker. But it's
yeah.
only about 5 or 6 years ago I realized what she was talking about. It's because when you're outside the bubble, like what we said earlier, it's like a vibration. You're in a higher vibration, a higher state of thought. And then
Mm-hmm.
some things just happen to flow to you. Your
Mm-hmm.
ideas, what you want to do, how you feel, and so forth. And that's what I got to understand. Do you
Yeah.
find that higher state is a
Oh,
good place to be?
oh yeah, it's everything. I think, and this is why I don't push people to work a lot of hours. It's like real like insights, real like creative, like the thing that's gonna really take you from, like the 10x growth never comes from sitting here in front of the desk and be like, okay, I need to solve this problem, like actively pushing. No way. It literally comes from, you just woke up and you have this idea, or you're about to fall asleep and you're like, oh yeah, okay, now I know how to solve this problem, right? So when
Yeah.
you create space, and I got this from Jeff Bezos. He even he says that most of his ideas, most of his things come from when he's wandering, like he's just like wandering, just wander, like just he creates space to just do nothing. And
Yeah.
when you have nothing to do, it's like, it's not that you're not working, it's just that you're not forcing something. It's
Yeah.
almost like your mind synthesize all the information and kind of like creates the pathways to deliver you the answers that you want. So
It's
I
like
think,
lack,
yeah,
want and lack. When you want something so bad, you create the lack, and all of a sudden the problems start piling on top of you. And I do say the same thing to people when they talk about money and their bank accounts. If you
mm-hmm.
keep thinking about it, you're not going to solve it. Whereas you just release it and let it go, and then be open. All of a sudden, things start to happen. But you've got to be aware of them coming towards you, so you can,
Yeah,
like what you said, like the lady, I mentioned. That's exactly what she was trying to tell me, but
yeah,
it was in a different way. If she hadn't told me
yeah.
exactly what you meant, I would have understood.
Yeah. No, I
So,
think it's
look,
super
Serge,
important.
yeah, look, is there anything else that you can share that you think would be helpful for our listeners today?
Um, I think something that I always remind myself is to just keep in mind that, like, no one is special. They just put in more time than you. Like, there is no quick path to becoming successful, to becoming wealthy. There are a certain set of principles that you need to follow. There are certain steps that you need to take. And if someone is in a different situation than you, it's because inevitably they follow those principles and they took those steps. So instead of looking at people who are in a better situation and be like, oh my God, I can never be in that position, just bring it back down to the first principles, like the core reasons as to why someone is in a different position. You'll realize that it's not magic. It's just day in, day out, following a set of principles and a set of steps until the mission gets completed.
That's it. Persistence is always
Yeah.
key.
Yeah.
Uh, Fantastic. Look, some great insights, some real great golden nuggets there for a lot of people to utilize. Where can they make contact with you? Can you share some details?
Yeah, if you want to reach out or check out some of my content, it's on just YouTube, Serge Gatari. I also have a podcast that I released recently. It's called Natural Born Leaders. And yeah, on Instagram, it's also Serge Gatari if you ever have any questions around growing your company.
Serge,
Yeah.
it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for taking the time out today.
No, thank you so much.